After 60 years of tent camping, I have finally made the switch between the tent and the hammock. Join me on this episode of The Vintage Hiker as I look at some of the differences between the tent versus the hammock. You don't want to miss this episode as I share with you a few of the things I've learned as I've made this transition. Now, I'm not new to camping. In fact, I've been camping since I was a kid in the Boy Scouts. I've camped in everything from those little canvas pup tents with no floors in them, to various car camping tents that I've owned over these years. I've also done the ultralight thing, and I've got several ultralight tents that I really love and have enjoyed greatly carrying those tents as well as sleeping in those tents. But this year I decided I was going to switch from the tent over to a hammock. And I really decided to do that for a couple of reasons. One, sleeping in a tent was just getting difficult for me. To get up and crawl out of that tent in the middle of the night when old men have to go to the bathroom. In the mornings when I got up and tried to pack the tent up, it was always, wet underneath. You do your best to shake it off, but you still had a lot of condensation on the tent. You had a lot of moisture from underneath the tent. You left a pretty sizable footprint. And all in all, I was just looking for a change. So after hammocking now exclusively for a few months, here are the major differences that I've found between the tent and the hammock. Now, while the tent's still relatively easy to set up, there just seems like there's still a lot more moving around, a lot more wrangling with the tent in the wind. And certainly if it's raining, you're there trying to set your tent up with the rain pouring down on you. And when you're setting up a tent, you've got to find flat areas. You've got to find somewhere that isn't obstructed with roots and rocks and other kinds of things that might poke through your tent or at the very least make your night sleeping not a very pleasant experience. In a hammock, however, you're basically just moving between tree and tree about 15 feet. And the great thing about a hammock is when you pull it out of your backpack, nothing touches the ground. Everything comes out of the backpack. I take the hammock out of the backpack. I hook it to my straps that are connected to the tree. I take my tarp and I also hook the tarp up to the tree. I take my underquilt out, my top quilt out. Nothing ever has to touch the ground when I'm setting it up. And another benefit, if it's raining, I can set this tarp up first and then I can put everything else up underneath the tarp. So relatively staying dry. Now for packing, I have to give that to the tent. The tent, especially an ultralight type tent, is far more compact and it's easier to stuff down into your pack. I use a 40-liter pack, so you're a little bit tight. I've got about a 14-pound base weight. And I found that my hammock setup is not a whole lot more. It's very comparable in weight with the tent, but the tent packs a lot tighter. The hammock stuff with the underquilt, the top quilt, and all of the things that go along with it is a little bit more bulky in trying to pack it into that 40-liter. So I've had to be a little bit more strategic. So pound for pound, similar, but bulk to bulk, the tent gets that one. So all in all, which one is really easier to use, the tent or the hammock? I think that's probably relative. The tent is more intuitive, at least for me, because I've camped in tents for 60 years and I've set up a whole lot of different kinds of tents, and probably everybody has set up some kind of tent in their life. So it comes more natural, I think, to people when the setup and breakdown comes with the tent or the hammock. But the hammock, once you get through the learning curve and some of those little subtleties of setting up the hammock with your underquilt and your tarp and your hang just right between the trees, the hammock is relatively easy and it's pretty streamlined. So I would say the tent or the hammock overall, the winner is both. Whichever you'd like to use. Both of them can go in your backpack, take you out on the trail. Both of them provide you shelter. Both of them give you the opportunity to get out of the house and into the outdoors. So whichever you choose, that's probably the right one for you. I'm not one of these people who's going to say, hey, I'm only going to use a hammock or I'm only going to use a tent. Different times, different scenarios, different trips. I'll use the hammock some. I'll use the tent some. I think because the hammock is new to me, I'll be using it more this year than I will the tent. But I'm thankful that I've got the opportunity as a vintage hiker to use a tent and a hammock to get myself out on the trail. So I hope this video has been a little bit helpful for you. If it has, why don't you like it? Why don't you subscribe to my channel? And I'll be putting out more videos. Till next time, I'm the Vintage Hiker. See you on the trail.